Okay, we're recording. So hello, my name is Mike. I'm the computer guy here at East Chicago Public Library. Hey, Manny. Okay, cool. And today we're doing part 2 of our spreadsheet class. This is the last class of 2025. So we did 12 full classes, and we are going to be doing some supplemental classes in between. On Friday, January 30th, in this room at the main library at 1 o'clock, we're doing a media literacy class about media literacy and misinformation. We talk about some of the pitfalls of using social media, and we also talk a little bit about AI and how misinformation spreads and how to combat misinformation, the importance of free press. And we also start talking about how to use technology in a healthy way. Okay? Because I don't know if you've noticed, if you have a smartphone, it can be addictive. They're designed to be addictive. They're designed to keep your attention, right? So I don't know if you've ever been sitting and watching TV and had an urge to scroll on your smartphone at the same time you're already being entertained by something on TV. That's because this is affecting us. All right, so we learn about that in the media literacy class. That's just a one-time class, Friday, January 30th at 1 o'clock. And then after that, we're going to take a few-week break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to have a 4-week class, 1 hour per week, called Mindfulness for Modern Times. Okay, so what we're doing in that class is we're learning about mindfulness meditation, okay, to help us moderate the amount of media that we're getting on a regular basis. Okay. So those classes will start Friday, starting February 20th. Those classes have been approved by the Indiana State Library for continuing education credits for librarians. So I do have some professional librarians who come to these classes, which will be good. And then I want to give you a reminder that we do have a community help desk here at the main library. So that's every Tuesday and Thursday from 1 to 4 in the afternoon. We make ourselves available in the front of the main library here in East Chicago for any kind of tech help that you may need. If there is a class that you missed that you want to get caught up on, we can do that one-on-one in help desk. If you have a broken laptop, we can probably help you with that. If you have a new phone, or if you need to activate a new phone, we get a lot of that kind of stuff. So really the help desk is anything that you might need help with technology related, whether you have a device or whether you just need some more training. You can bring in your own devices. People have brought in printers and stuff like that before. If you need help getting them out of your car, let us know. We can take a book cart out to your car and bring it in. And that's every Tuesday and Thursday from 1 to 4 at the main library. It is Christmas time, so next week we're closed on Thursday. We will have help desk on Tuesday, and then the week after that, it's New Year's Day. We're also closed. So the next 2 weeks, we're only going to have the help desk on Tuesday, but after that, then we'll resume having a help desk every Tuesday and Thursday from 1 to 4. It's first come, first serve, one-on-one help. You can bring in your own devices, but you must stay with your device at all times. There's no drop-offs. Okay, so let's take a look at Microsoft Excel. I'm going to give you a little bit of a review from last week. Okay. So we talked about getting around a spreadsheet and what a spreadsheet is for last week. Yeah. This is Sam. Sam will get you. Sam will keep you on track if you need help. Just raise your hand.
It's student with a capital F.
Okay, so a spreadsheet is basically a bunch of columns and rows that make a grid that were originally used as like a bank ledger, you know? So, you know, when you used to balance your checkbook and you'd see all these columns and rows to make everything neat? Well, The reason they have those defined columns and rows is so you don't accidentally put cents in the dollars area, right? It kind of keeps things neatly cordoned off. So when computers came out, they made a computerized spreadsheet. What's nice about a computerized spreadsheet is you can have cells, and a cell is an intersection of a column and a row. So this is column E, for example, and all the columns have letters, and all the rows have numbers. So this is column E, this is row 2, and the intersection of column E and row 2 is a cell. Okay, and we call that cell E2. All right. Spreadsheets are primarily used for two purposes. One is creating what we call a logical data table. Okay, that's where we're storing large amounts of information. Okay, we did that last week. We created a little database of the movies we have in our house, and we indexed them. Okay, so we put in a record for every movie that we had in our house. I tried to give an example of something that people could do at home, right? I actually did this once upon a time. I took all the CDs in the house and I put them in a binder, a 3-ring binder, and it saved a lot of space. Instead of having a bunch of CDs in a rack, they fit all in a 3-ring binder. But then how do you find them in the binder? Well, we created a spreadsheet and put a record of information for every CD that we had. We did this as a class last week, and we created a record for every movie that we had. When you're creating a logical data table to store a large amount of information, there are a few rules we need to follow. And that first rule is a column of information, like information that you put in column E, that is going to be what we call a field of information. Now, you're probably used to the word field of information. You ever go on Amazon.com and it says fill out the following fields? The name field and your address field, and fill out all those fields. When you fill out those fields on a website, they get stored in a table like this. This is just a very elegant and easy way to store large amounts of data in a table. Everything in a column is what we call a field of information, and everything in a row is what we call a record of information. Let me pull up a phone book example. Okay. I think this is the image I used last week. Okay, so if you look at this example, this is like a phone book example. Every column of information is going to store the same type of information. So if you see over here, you have like category, first name, and last name. Those are all fields of information. The category field, the first name field, the last name field. A record of information is a row, okay? In a column, you're going to have the same type of information. It's a rule you have to follow. If you have a column that is for the last name, everything in that column has got to be a last name. You're not going to pollute it with any other kind of data. A row, on the other hand, can have many different types of data, like a name or a phone number or an address, but it all has to relate to each other. That's what a record of information is. So when you create a logical data table, it's basically made up of two things: columns of fields and rows of records. Okay. when you sit down to create a spreadsheet to store a large amount of information, the very first thing we need to do is we need to create what we call a column header. At the cell, at the very top of the column, is a descriptor of the information that belongs in that column. And you see it here on the example written as category or first name or last name. Okay, that's what we call a column header. And that column header is not part of the data we're storing. It's a description of the field that belongs in that column. So last week, we stored our movies. So we created a title field. The very top of the column, we typed in title. And everything in that column was the title of a movie. Okay. We also had a field called starring, who stars in the movie, right? So at the very top of the column, we put in starring, and then below that, we typed in the person who starred in the movie for each record. So at the end, we had a record of each movie that we had in our database. Okay. If you follow these rules, okay, and you make a logical data table that is columns and rows with no spaces, that data can be very flexible to use in the future. Okay, you can use it in other applications. For example, this is how the water company stores water bills, right? They have a big table like this. So they have your name, probably your customer number, they have your address, and they have how much money you owe for the water bill for this month, right? Well, when they go to send you a bill in the mail, they don't type up a letter for every bill that goes out, right? What they do is they create one little form letter, and they use a data table of information like this to generate what they call it a mail merge, okay? We have the ability to do a mail merge using Microsoft Word, which we did a 2-part class on word processing, and data stored in a spreadsheet like this. So at the end of class today, I'm going to show you how we can take the press release we created in our word processing class and use the information that we created in the spreadsheet last week to merge it into press releases that can be generated automatically. So this is exactly how the water company stores your data. So they'll just type one letter and they'll say dear, and they'll just type in name field, right? First name, last name, at this address, and they just put in address, and then they tell that letter to pull in for every record the name, the address, and how much money you owe, print that letter out, and then go to the next record in the spreadsheet. So that's kind of how a logical data table works. Every row is a record of information that, in the water company example, would generate a letter for every record. What's nice about that is, well, you don't have to type up, water companies probably got 30,000 bills they gotta send out. You can type that letter once, you get a logical data table of 30,000 records, which is not that big of a spreadsheet, believe it or not. And you can generate those all yourself. Today, we're going to create another logical data table. And we're going to start by putting in our column headers. When you sit down to store information, the first thing you do is go, what information do I want my spreadsheet to hold? Those are going to be your column headers. Those are going to be the descriptors on the top of every column. Then the rest of it is just filling in the information. So today, instead of creating a logical data table to store information like a phone book example, what we're going to do instead is we're going to create a logical data table that is going to store weather information from like a weather station we have in our backyard. What we're going to do with that weather information is we're going to learn how to take information in a spreadsheet cell and make it into a calculation so it'll automatically calculate those values. So, has everybody got their spreadsheet open? Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to click in cell A1. And the first thing we're going to do is, what information do I want to store from my weather station out in the backyard? I want to store temperature data. I want to store humidity. I want to store precipitation. And I want to track that information for every day of the week. Okay. So in the first column, I'm going to put the day of the week. So in cell A1, click with your mouse in cell A1 and type in the word day. If you notice, we have a blinking cursor after the word day. That means we are currently editing text within this cell. When we're done typing that information in, we need to commit the data to that cell, and we do that by hitting the Enter key or hitting the Tab key. If you notice, I'm going to hit the Enter key and watch what happens. The selected cell moves down one. Okay. Sometimes you want that to happen. Sometimes you want it to move over to the right. If you want it to move over to the right, you can use the Tab key instead. They'll both work to commit data to the cell. But for every day of the week, we're going to store the high temp and the low temp for the day. So in cell B1, at the very top of column B, cell B1 here, we're going to type in the words high temp. This column is going to store the high temperature for that day of the week. This is a column, so this is the high temp field. Everything in this column is going to be a temperature value. Okay, on the top of column C, this column is going to store the low temp for the day. So we can type in low temp on the top of column C. Now to commit the data to the cell, I'm going to hit the Tab key. What that's going to do is that's going to move my selected cell one over to the right. Okay, column D is going to store the average humidity for the day, the humidity for the day. So we're going to type in the word humidity in cell D1. Then I'm going to hit the Tab key again. And this is the last column. Column E is going to hold precipitation, how much rain we got for the day. So in cell E1, I'm going to type in precipitation, P-R-E-C-I-P-I-T-I-O-N, precipitation.
I've got 9% on my battery.
Okay, sure. That's fine. Yeah. Sorry about that. You caught up? Well, I'll tell you what, while you get caught up, Jackie, you're welcome to help yourself. We have refreshments in the back if you'd like something to drink or a cookie or something. Okay. While she gets caught up, I'm going to get a cup of coffee.
Oh, this one's much better.
Okay, sometimes, and we learned this last week, but Jackie, I'll show you this. Sometimes the text that we put into a cell is a little too long for the width of the cell. When that happens, we can click and drag to make the column wider. So the way you do that is you move your mouse pointer right on the line between the two columns. So you see between column E and F here, if I put my mouse there, see how the mouse pointer changes to that little line with double arrows? If we click and drag here, this allows us to change the width of the column. So if we do type something into a cell that's overlaps, that's how you manage your column width. You can also double click right on that line, and what it'll do is it'll auto fit the width of the column for the longest text in that column. So if I were to double click here, click, click, see it automatically looks at the word precipitation and adjusts the width of that column to fit precipitation. Okay. So this is basically the outline of our logical data table that's going to store information from our weather station out back. When you sit down to create the spreadsheet, just remember, the first thing you need to think about is what information do I want my spreadsheet to hold? And whatever the answer to that is, those are going to be your column headers. What information do I want my spreadsheet to hold? I want it to hold the temperature for the days of the week. The rest of this is just filling in records of information, filling in the record of the high temp, low temp, humidity, and precipitation for each day of the week. So let's do that. We're going to start in cell A2. And the first day of the week, we're going to type in the word Monday. And the high temp for Monday was 98 degrees. So in cell B2, we're going to type in 98. And then I told you before you can hit enter to commit data to the cell, but it's going to bring your selected cell, the selection down, or you can hit tab if you wanted to commit the data to the cell to move over to the right or left. The arrow keys will also work. But I'm going to hit tab to go over to low temp. The low temp for Monday was 75 degrees. And then I want you to hit tab again to get over to cell D2. Okay. So now things get a little tricky. Humidity. We talked about formatting text in a cell last week if we wanted our text to look bold or a different color. And we talked about formatting text in our word processing class, where we could take a paragraph and format the paragraph. In Excel, we can format a number. Okay. Why would I want to format a number? Because sometimes I want numbers to appear as a percent. Sometimes I want numbers to appear as currency with a dollar sign. When you're typing in currency in Excel, you don't type in the dollar sign. You type in the number and then you format the cell to appear in the format you want it to look. Right? We're talking about a percentage of humidity for Monday today, and a percentage is actually a decimal, like 95%. If you're not good with a spreadsheet, you'd think, well, 95, and then the percent sign would be the right way to type that in. But that's actually not correct. 0.95 is the right way to type in 95%. And then what we can do is we can go later and we can tell that cell to show us the number in the cell as a percent or as a currency. Or there's a bunch of different number formats, date formats, and other things like that. But in this case, the humidity for Monday was a 95% humidity, and we're going to type that in, starting with the decimal point, 0.95. Then we're going to hit the tab key. Are you caught up, by the way? Okay, good. The precipitation for Monday was, it rained a little bit. We had 0.3 inches. We're just going to put 0.3. That's the amount of precipitation we had for Monday. Now, instead of hitting the tab key, because the tab key would commit that data to the cell, but move our selection to the right. If I hit the enter key, watch what happens when I hit the enter key. Instead of going down, it actually goes down and to the left. It understands we're typing in records of information, right? You remember cut, copy, and paste from our word processing class? We can copy and paste cells as well. So for example, say this high temp right here, 98 degrees. What if 98 degrees was also the high temp for Tuesday the next day? we wouldn't have to type that cell. We wouldn't have to type 98 again. We could copy and paste the cell. And I want to show you what that looks like. So to copy and paste a cell in Excel, I want you to click to select the cell that has the information that you want to copy to someplace else, cell B2, for example. And then we're going to hit the copy button, which is up in our toolbar here. This is our copy button. It looks like 2 copies of a piece of paper. If you float your mouse over it up here, it'll give you a little tooltip. It'll say, this is the copy button. When I click on the copy button, look what happens to the cell. It has little dotted lines. We call them ants. Looks like there's ants going around the cell. That is telling you that it made a copy of that cell, and we can paste that information someplace else. Now that that cell is copied, where do we want to paste that cell to? Well, I'm going to paste it right below it, right on the cell below it. So I'm going to click right below on cell B3, and then I'm going to hit the paste button up here. And when I click on paste, see what it does? It pastes the 98 from above it to the cell below it. If you notice, there's still dotted lines going around that 98. That is telling you that you can still paste that value other places if you want to. So for example, look up at the screen. I'm going to paste it over here just to show you what it looks like, but you don't have to do this with me because I don't really want to paste it there. If I hit paste again, see what it did? It just pasted that as well. As long as you see these dots going around that cell, that means you're able to paste that value anywhere you want to paste it, which can be very handy if you're working with a very large table of information. You might have a string of numbers that are long, and it's easier to copy it and paste it in several different places at a time. Once you're done pasting, the escape key will make those dots go away. And that's on the top left-hand corner of your keyboard, the escape key. Last week, I taught you about undo. Control Z. I'm going to hit Control Z because I didn't really want to paste that 98 there under precipitation. The Control Z is undo. It'll undo the last thing you did. And if you keep hitting it, it'll undo lots of stuff. That's right. Okay. That is a great way to copy data from one cell and paste it to another cell. But sometimes we're copying data to a cell adjacent to another cell, and there's an easier way to do that. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger on the screen so you can see it. So the first thing I'm going to do is to see this 98 that I copied to this second row. I'm going to click on it one time to select the cell, and then I'm going to hit the delete key on my keyboard, and that's going to clear the data out of that cell. I'm going to copy and paste this value again, but I'm going to do it in a different way. When you have a cell selected like this, if you look at the bottom right-hand corner of the selection, there looks like there's a little black dot. When you move your mouse over it, see it turns into this little plus sign there? That will allow you to click and drag a value to adjacent cell. So if I wanted to copy this number 98 down like 5 times, I could drag it all the way down like this. And when I let go, it pastes that 98 for as many cells as I drag it down. I'm going to hit Control Z to undo it. I'm going to show you that again. There is a little black dot on the bottom right-hand corner of a selected cell that when you move your mouse over it, you'll notice this mouse pointer change to this little dark colored plus sign. Now you can click and drag with your mouse. This is really only useful if you're copying and pasting to an adjacent cell, right? You can't use this if you wanted to paste it 5 cells down. You did only adjacent, right? Now when I let go, it'll copy and it'll paste that 98 across all those cells. It's not really good data. I just wanted to show you an example because the high temp for the week is not going to be 98 every day. but that's just a different way to copy it. I'm going to hit Control Z to undo that. But watch, we can do the same thing with text like Monday. Click on the word Monday, and then I want you to take this little box on the bottom right-hand corner and click and drag down 5 days. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then let go. And look what it did. It didn't copy the word Monday down 5 times like it did the number 98, right? It copied Monday, Tuesday. And not only that is, you'll also see when that happens, you got this little box down here that automatically pops up whenever this happens. This little box on the bottom right-hand corner, if you float your mouse over it, you'll see it'll tell you that is what they call autofill options. You'd be surprised how well that works. Most of the time, that's exactly what you're looking for. You didn't want Monday all the way down. I really did want Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. But sometimes you're just keeping track of Monday. And sometimes you want to copy and paste Monday all the way down. This little box down here on the bottom right-hand corner, when that happens, gives you the ability to change the autofill options. And if you click on it, it'll give you these options. Did you really want to fill in the series? And it's showing you that's what it did. It filled in a series. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You could have alternatively said, no, you know what? I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to copy the cells. And if that's what you wanted, you can choose this, and look what it does. It just copies the Monday all the way down. There are other options in here, like fill days or just fill weekdays. When I filled in the series, if you noticed, it filled in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. But maybe I wanted it to fill in the series, but I didn't want weekends included. Well, that's what this little option fill weekdays is for. And if I chose that one, it would have copied and pasted Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then started back over at Monday. So when you're copying information from one cell to another to paste it someplace else, and the cells are not adjacent, you're going to need to select the cell and choose copy, and then put your selection where you want to paste it, and then choose paste. But if you're copying and pasting to an adjacent cell, well, then you can click and drag that little box on the bottom right-hand corner of the selected cell to copy your data or fill in a series. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is the series I wanted it to hold. But now, if you look, we also have Wednesday that's a little too wide for this column. So this is another example where we're going to have to make the column a little wider. So if we go up to the very top and we're going to put our mouse on the line between column A and B up here, we can either click and drag out for Wednesday, or we can double click to auto fit the width of this column. Let's do that. Put your mouse right on this line and click and drag out, or double click to auto fit. And it'll make the width of that column fit the longest string in our column, which is Wednesday. Okay. The rest is just data entry. So just like we did with our movie list last week, we just have to fill in the blanks. So I'm going to go ahead and start filling in these blanks, and you can follow along. Tuesday was another hot day. It was 99 degrees. But the low temp that day, it cooled off in the afternoon. It was only 70. We had 80% humidity on Tuesday, which is 0.8. And we had a full inch of rain. So I'm just going to type in the number 1 for precipitation. Now, since I'm at the end of my record, instead of hitting the tab key to commit the data, I'm going to hit the enter key. That's going to bring my selection all the way down to the next high temp for the next day, Wednesday. And Wednesday was cooler. It was only 75 is the high. Our low temp was 69 degrees. It was humid. We had 95% humidity that day, so it's 0.95. and we had 0.1 inches of rain, just a little bit of rain. So 0.1 is our precipitation. I'm going to hit the enter key and start typing in for Thursday. Thursday's high temp was 84 degrees. Low temp was 80 degrees. Our humidity was 79%. So I'm going to type in 0.79. I'm going to hit the tab key. We didn't have any rain on Thursday, so that's going to be a 0. Friday's high was 75. The low was 70. We had 70% humidity, and we had 0.3 inches of rain. Okay. This is a complete logical data table, but actually this Monday here, I'm only going to be storing data from Monday through Friday, so I don't even need this Monday. So I'm going to delete the value in cell A7, and you can delete the contents of any cell by clicking on it once to select it and hitting the delete key on your keyboard. Clear it out. This is a review from last week. If you need to edit information in a cell that you already typed in, so for example, let's say I misspelled Wednesday here when I was typing, and I needed to fix that Wednesday, there's a couple of different ways you can do it. First of all, if you click the cell A4 with Wednesday in it and you type over it, it's going to replace whatever you type over on that cell. So you could just retype Wednesday the right way and replace it, or you could edit the text in the cell, and you do that by double clicking on the cell. And when you do that, you'll notice you'll get that little cursor blinking in the cell. That little cursor is telling you that you can now use that cursor to edit the data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click at the end of the letter M. I'm going to hit backspace, and I'm going to change that M to an N. I just want to show you that's how you can edit information inside of a cell, double clicking on it. Now, we still see the blinking cursor in the cell. We still have to commit this data to the cell to tell it that we're done typing. And we're going to do that by hitting the tab key, the enter key, or the arrows, the up, down, left, right arrows on the keyboard do the same thing. I'm going to hit enter. Okay. The rules for a logical data table are what? These are important. There's only 3 rules. A column is a field of information, and everything in that column is going to be the same kind of information. Look, column C is my low temp field, and everything in that column is going to be a temperature. Except, of course, for our column header. The column header is not part of the data. It's a descriptor that tells us what information is in that column. That's 2 rules. A column is a field of information. It's all got to be the same kind of information. Rule number 2, a column header is the descriptor that belongs to the very cell on the top of the column. In this case, cell C1. That's our descriptor, low temp, telling us that that's the low temp field. The other rule is everything in a row is a record of information. A record of information is different types of information, but it all has to be related. So Monday is the row that I have selected up here. Everything on that row is going to belong to Monday. Sometimes people are creating a logical data table and they start typing many different fields of information. It starts getting long. So they go, well, I'm going to move some of this information from Monday down to the row beneath it. If you do that, Excel is going to think it's a different record. It's not going to know that it belongs to Monday. That's why it's a rule. If you keep everything on the same row, it'll understand that all those temperatures belong to Monday. Okay. Sometimes people think it's, well, I wanted to put on one sheet of paper or something like that, so they move data to a second row, and that kind of breaks the table. So those are your three rules. When you do that, when you create this table using those rules, well, then information gets a lot more flexible. So what I'm going to do here, and this is a review from last week that I'm going to show you since you didn't see it. If I click anywhere in this logical data table, I've got in my home toolbar up here, I've got something called sort. When I click on this sort and filter button, I'm going to choose custom sort, and what it does is notice how it automatically selected all of the records in my table, but it did not select the very top row. It's smart enough to know that that top row are descriptors. If we were going to sort the data in this table, for example, by precipitation, for example, or humidity, let's sort it by humidity. I'm going to sort this, but when I choose sort by and choose this little drop down list, look what it's asking me. Okay, do you want to sort by day? Do you want to sort by high temp or low temp? It's not asking me to sort by a column. It understands the column header is a descriptor, so it allows me to say, no, I want to sort this table by humidity, and I want to sort it smallest to largest. You'll notice that you do have a little check mark up here that says my data has headers. It's automatically checked. It saw that these were column headers describing the data. So when I hit sort, when I hit OK, it's going to sort the data in this table smallest to largest by humidity. So see what it did? It brought Friday's record up to the top because Friday had the least amount of humidity. Okay. It did not move these cells. It would never move these cells. Those always belong on top. They're a descriptor of what belongs underneath it. The other thing, sometimes people like more spaces between their rows, so they'll leave a blank row. Then Excel is going to think you have two separate tables. So if you needed to insert a row or a column, you could put your cursor in the adjacent row or column, and then there's an insert button up on your toolbar. So I'm going to insert a blank row here. I'm going to say insert a row. You don't have to do this with me. I just want to show you. See, so some people will put a space, a row like this for spacing. But as soon as you do that, next time you go to sort, notice how it doesn't select the records that you have down here. It sees this blank row and goes, oh, well, that's a break. It must be a separate table down here. Because you can have one table here, one table here, and one table here if you wanted to. But that is not really a good way to go about it. If you did want, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this entire column, and I'm going to right-click on it, and I'm going to choose delete, and it'll delete the entire column. If you did want more space between your rows, you can change the row height the same way that you change the column width, like by clicking and dragging. You move your mouse pointer over here on the line that sits right between the 2 and the 3, for example, and then you can click and drag to make the rows wider. See, this won't break your table. Okay, it just made the row higher to give you a little bit more space between the records. That is going to be the alternative to skipping a row, because you want to keep all your rows and columns without any spaces in there to keep that logical data table. If you follow these rules, then this table of information can be used very flexibly in a lot of different ways. Not only will it automate calculations better, but you can use the data in other applications, and I'll show you that at the end. We're going to take a data table of movies, and we're going to have it automatically populate a press release from the library of movies that we're going to, upcoming movies. So you'll kind of see how a well-constructed data table can give you a lot of flexibility in using that data other places. But right now, let's talk about calculations in cells. Actually, before we talk about calculations in cells, let's talk about cell formatting. Last week, we did some minor text formatting of cells. I'm going to do that again. I like the column headers, the descriptors, to look a little bit different than the data that I have in my table. Like the column headers, day, high temp, low temp, humidity, and precipitation. If I wanted to change how this text looks, I'm going to format it a different way. And I'm going to do that. First thing you need to do when you're formatting something is you need to select what you want to format. We can do that by clicking and dragging. I'm going to select cells A1 through E1. I'm going to just click and drag across these cells up at the top, and this will select all of those column headers. Now, as long as we're on our home toolbar up at the top, if you notice we have a bunch of different categories of toolbars, this home toolbar has a font formatting right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this letter B, and it's going to make my text bold. And I'm going to hit the U to underline it. And then I'm going to change the color of it. And this little A with the red line underneath it, if I hit that little arrow, the drop down arrow to the right of it, I can change this to like a blue. I'm going to change it to like a blue color, I think, dark teal. And then to deselect what I have selected so I can get a good look at what I'm looking at, click anywhere off the selected area. And now you can see that we formatted the text in cells A1 through E1 to be bold, underlined, and a slightly different color. I like when I'm making a spreadsheet to have my column headers look different than the data. I just think it's visually pleasing. We did font and paragraph formatting in word processing, but one thing we didn't do in word processing was formatting a number. That is something we do in Excel. And the one thing that I want to format is I want to format the numbers here under humidity to show as if they were a percentage. Now, I could click and drag the cells to select the cells that I want to format like this, the same way that I clicked and dragged to select column headers. But I'm going to do something a little bit different this time. Instead of just clicking the cells I want to format, I'm going to select the entire column. And you can select an entire row or column simply by clicking on the letter of the column or the number of the row. So if I just click right on the letter D, it selects the entire column. I'm going to format the entire column. Why would I do that? Why would I format blank cells below this? Well, data might be going in there later. And I can format the cells to show me as a percentage. And if we ever put a number in there later, it's going to automatically be formatted to show me that. Now that I have column D selected, you'll notice in our home toolbar, we have an area here called number. This is for formatting a number. And right now it's set to general number format. Click on this little drop down arrow here and it'll show you all of the different number formats that you can have Excel display a number. Currency, accounting, short date, long date, time, percentage, fraction. We're going to choose percentage here in the list. And watch what happens. It changes the view of the humidity percentages to be 70.00. Which we don't really write humidity as 70.2%, right? We don't have 2 decimal places over that. We can change that. Up in this number toolbar, there was a button here for percent. This would have been an easier way to do it than dropping this list, but I wanted you to see some of these other number formats. Just to show you what it would look like, if I hit the $, this is what these cells would look like formatted as a currency. Now they put a 0 up front to show you $0.70. But in all actuality, we wanted this as a percentage. And look what it did there. Huh, it took away our decimal points. Did it do that for you too? If you ever need to increase or decrease the amount of decimal points that it is showing you in the format, there's two little buttons up in this number formatting toolbar that will do that as well. This one is this is decreased decimal, and this is increased decimal. If I hit this a couple of times, you see what it's doing? It's increasing the amount of decimal points I see in my formatting. Because, you would never write $1.10 as $1.1. It's always going to be 1.0, right? But in humidity, it doesn't really matter. As a matter of fact, I don't want any decimal points in humidity. I just want to see 70% humidity, 79% humidity, and 80% humidity. What's nice about this is if I were to type a number down here, like if I added another day and I typed in another low temp down here, like 56, it's going to be formatted in this normal way. But if I were to put in something here like 0.56, since I formatted the entire column, when I enter in this number, see what it does? It automatically formats it as a percentage. It knows, since I formatted the entire column, that no matter how far down I go, any number in this column, it's a rule I have to follow. Everything in that column has to be humidity. That's one of the rules of a logical data table. So you might as well select the entire column and format the column. And I'm going to delete this 56 because I just wanted to show you what it would look like. But let's talk calculating numbers inside of a cell. This is where Excel becomes really useful and will save you a lot of work. It can do rocket science math. So it can do just about any kind of math you could throw at it. Your limitation is going to be your math ability. So I took a lot of math in college. That was a long time ago. So my math is pretty decent, but not rocket science good. This can do rocket science. I can't. But there are some rules that we're going to have to try and remember when it comes to math class. Okay. If you want a cell in Microsoft Excel to show you the result of a calculation, you have to start by typing in the equal sign first. If you don't use Excel regularly, that's the first thing you're going to forget. You're going to have to Google it later. If you want the contents of a cell to show you the result of a calculation, you start by typing the equal sign first. And I'll show you an example of that. In cell 7, B7 right here, if I just type in 1 plus 2, and hit the enter key, it just puts in the cell 1 plus 2. But I'm going to delete that. If I type the equal sign first, and then I type in 1 plus 2, now when I hit enter, it knows that it needs to show me the result of the calculation. Then it'll show me 3. The operators that Excel uses, the plus and the minus, are easy. And if you look to your right on the keyboard, you have that little 10-key number pad. You have a plus and minus there. You've also got an asterisk and a forward slash. The asterisk is what we use for multiplying, and the forward slash is for division. Okay. Sometimes when you open a spreadsheet and you're looking at the cells of a spreadsheet, sometimes you don't always know what's in the cell. For example, see cell B3 there? There's a number 3 in B3, and there's a 75 in B6 right here. But one of these is a calculated cell, and one of these is not. And how do we tell the difference? We have up here in our toolbar, this is called our formula bar up here. We can edit text right in that formula bar, but it is also really good to show you what is in the cell if it's a calculated cell. Because is in this cell the number 3? No, this cell is not the number 3. If I click on cell B7, it looks like number 3, but when I look up in the formula bar, it's actually the equal sign and 1 plus 2. See that? So this formula bar is really handy for seeing that whatever is in a cell is automatically calculated, or if it's a constant number. The reason you'd need to do that is sometimes somebody gives you a spreadsheet and they want you to fill in information, right? And they don't want you to type over a cell that's automatically being calculated. The cell is automatically being calculated, so you don't have to type in it. But also, sometimes these calculations can get really long, right? And when they do get long, sometimes it's easier to come up here and just edit the contents of the cell inside this formula bar itself. So if I just add up here +3 and then +5 right up in my formula bar up at the top, now when I hit enter, it'll still calculate this out. That's showing me an 11. Now, adding 1 plus 2 and plus 3 and plus 5, I guess that could be handy, but when it really becomes powerful is you can use cell references in the calculation as well. And I'll show you how to do that. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to click right on cell B7 and I'm going to hit the delete key to clear out the contents completely. And we're going to start again. So I want you to click on cell B7 at the bottom of the high temp column here. Hit the delete key to clear it out. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the equal sign. And anytime you start with an equal sign, remember, this is telling Excel, I want this cell to show me the result of a calculation. But instead of typing in numbers, I'm going to type in a cell reference. What if I wanted to add together cells B2 and cells B3, the 75 and 84 here? Well, I would type in B2. And when I type in B2, notice what it does. It automatically highlights in blue and shows me cell B2 up there. It's kind of leading me. It's saying, okay, well, you want to use a calculation using the cell B2? That's fine. This is where it's going to pull the data from. Now I'm going to hit the plus sign, and I'm going to add this to cell B3. Now when I type in B3, see what it does? It highlights the cell in the same color that I typed in B3 here. So instead of typing in a constant number like 1 plus 2 or 5 times 3, you can type in the cell reference number. Now when I hit enter, what this is going to do is this is going to add together 75 and 84 when I hit enter, and it gives me 159. Now that's fun because you can see how you can use a cell reference. Question? That's fun because you can see how you can use a cell reference instead of a constant number, and it'll use whatever number's in there. What really makes this powerful is, what if down the line you looked at this and went, oh, Friday's high temp wasn't 75 at all. It was actually 85. If you were to change this number here, this cell that's being calculated using this cell would automatically update itself. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to just, you don't have to do this with me because I'm going to undo it as soon as I'm done. But if I typed in 85 here instead of 75, as soon as I hit the enter key, notice the 159 is going to get updated. It automatically updates it to 169 because I changed that number. That's what really makes Excel powerful. In the ledger example that we saw last week, it kind of looked like you're balancing your checkbook, right? You have debits and credits, and then you have your balance. And your balance is just the credits add to the balance and the debits removed from the balance, right? Well, in the old days, that was a grid that you wrote in, and you had to make all those calculations. Well, if you got down to the very end and realized that you switched around two numbers at the very beginning, all your math's wrong, right? You got to go erase the whole thing and start over. With a spreadsheet, that balance can be automatically calculated. So if you notice a mistake up in that first one, change it, and it automatically updates all the other calculations all the way down. That's what really makes Excel powerful. But let's look a little bit closer at this calculation. If I look up in my formula bar, I can see that the contents of the cell isn't 169, but it's actually two cells being referenced. And if I click up in my formula bar, it'll show me, okay, no, you're actually in this cell is not a constant number. You're actually adding together the contents of cell B2 and B3. But that doesn't give us any good information. Who cares what the total high temp was for Friday and Thursday? That's not good information. What would be good information? Maybe the average temperature for the week, right? Maybe adding together the temperatures from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then dividing it by 5 would give us an average temperature for the week. That might actually be good information. And we can do that. As a matter of fact, let's do that. And we can just add to this calculation here. We're already adding together cells B2 and B3. Up in the formula bar, let's just add some more cells to it. We're gonna hit the plus sign after B3, and we're gonna add together B4. And then we're gonna hit plus sign again and add B5. And then we're gonna add the plus sign again, and we're gonna choose B6. Now, look what it's showing us here. It's making a color for every cell reference, and it's showing me that it's going to add together all of these cells. That's still not really good information, but we can now divide this all by 5 if I hit the division, and that's this forward slash here, and divide by 5. That's going to give me the average high temp for the week. Is it? No, it's not really. When I hit the enter key, watch what happens. It's telling me that the average high temp is 381 degrees. That doesn't sound right, does it? Do you know why it's wrong? Parentheses. What? Parentheses. Right. The order of operations. That's something we learned in math class. And hopefully you didn't kill the brain cell with that knowledge on it. So the right way to do this, and we can do this two ways. We can update it in our formula bar up here, or we can double click right on the cell and edit it within the cell too. The right way to do this was to put all of the cell references in parentheses. So you put a left parentheses before B2, and then you put a right parentheses after B6 here. And yeah, and then what that does is that's telling Excel, okay, add together all of these cell references first, and then divide by 5. Because what it was doing before, it was adding cell B5 to cell B6 over 5, which skewed it wrong. So now, when I hit the enter key with the parentheses around the first 5 additions, it's now giving me an average high temp for the week of 88.2. And if that looks different than yours, that's because I still have Friday as 85. If I put Friday back to 75, the way I put it in originally, when I hit the enter key, it'll update that average high temp automatically to 86.2. Okay, well, Excel just got a lot more interesting. It just got a lot more powerful because now we can do calculations right inside of a cell. I also want the average load temp. Okay. Actually, there's still a better way to do this. Excel has a built-in formula builder, right? Because sometimes you're not going to remember the correct formula for an average or the correct formula for whatever you're trying to get. So I'm going to, yeah, question? Okay. So even though I painstakingly wrote out B2 plus B3 plus B4 plus B5 plus B6, all in parentheses, over 5, I'm going to delete the contents of this cell. And I'm going to start over. So click on cell B7 to select that calculation. Hit the delete key on your keyboard, and it'll clear it out. And what we're going to do is we're going to put in the same formula, but we're going to do it using Excel's formula builder. Okay. Up in this formula bar, up at the top where we put in our where we see our formulas before, there's nothing up there because the cell is empty. But you see over to the left of it, this little number called f of x. That is a button that says insert function. Click on that little button for insert function, and what it does is it pops up a little function builder. Okay. You don't have to actually type in mathematical functions. Excel will do it for you, and it'll walk you through it with this little function builder. We're going to use average as an example because we already did that average calculation manually. Now we're going to do it again using this function builder. So the first thing you're going to notice when you hit that function builder is look what it did to the cell. It put an equal sign in the cell. As soon as you're entering a function in the cell, it knows that this is going to be a calculated cell. So it automatically puts the equal sign in there for you. And then this little insert function box says, well, do you know what function you're looking for? You can type in a brief description of the function. Okay. Or you can select a category of functions. Right now, it's just showing you the most recently used. You click on this little drop-down arrow, you can see the different categories of functions that come with Excel. So you have financial calculations, date and time, math and trigonometry, statistical, database, logical, engineering. There's a lot of different categories, and there are a lot of different functions in here. You're only limited by your own math knowledge. It'll do rocket science. But in our case, we have average down here. The most recently used, we have sum, we have average, we have if, we have count. Count is a function that would count the number of items in a column. You can have a column full of days of the week. You can say, well, how many Fridays do I have in this column? It'll tell you how many Fridays you have in this column. And in this case, we're going to choose average. And when I click on average in the function box over here, it shows me how to write the average function. And then it describes what it's going to do. This is going to return the average, the mean of its arguments, which can be numbers or names, arrays, or references, or cell references that contain numbers. And the way you would write this out would be average, and then in parentheses, the numbers that you want to average. So that's the function I want to use. So once you choose the average function, you can hit OK, and then it's going to walk you through this. The first thing it does is Excel is kind of smart. So Excel looks at the cells around it where you're putting in the function and tries to make an educated guess as to what you want to average. And in this case, it's saying, oh, do you want to average cells B2 colon B6, and that colon means through B6. That is what I want to average, actually. If it wasn't, I could just come over here and click and drag. And it'll even tell you the result. See over here, it says 86.2. It's saying, well, if you average cells B2 through B6, you don't have to type in B2, B3, B4, B5, B6. You can use the column if it's arranged like that. It's telling you what the number, what the result would be, 86.2, and that's right. But if that was not what you wanted to average, say you only wanted the average for the first 3 days of the week, you could come over here and just select the first 3 days of the week by clicking and dragging. And now it's only averaging cells B2 through B4. And the average for cells B2 through B4 is 86. So this little function builder will allow you, it'll guess as to what you want to average, or sum for that matter. But you can always click and drag what exactly you want it to average. Cells B2 through B6. And when you're done with this, you hit OK, and it inserts the function for you. 82, 86.2 is the average high temp. And if you look at our function bar up at the top, it's showing you that the contents of the cell is not 86.2, but a function called the average function. And that's how it's typed. The equal sign, the word average, and in parentheses, the range of cells that you want to average. Okay. The next thing I want to do is I want the average low temperature for the week. Now I could do that all again, but I can also copy and paste the formula that I already worked on. And this is super handy because a lot of times getting a formula to work correctly can be a little bit of a chore. And doing it over and over again can be just making more chores. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this function, this average function, from column B to column C. And I'm going to do that by, remember how we grabbed that little right-hand little box at the bottom of the cell? See this? What I'm going to do is I'm going to move my mouse pointer to the bottom right-hand corner of that selected cell where my calculation is in, and I'm going to click and drag it one cell over to the right and let go. Interestingly, it showed you the low temp, average low temp for the week, 72.8. But notice something in the calculation. It's averaging cells C2 to C6. When I copied and pasted this function, I copied a function that was not averaging the cells C2 to C6. It was averaging the cells B2 to B6. But when I pasted it over here, it changed the column. Excel is designed to do that. And they call that a relative cell reference. When you're referencing a cell above you in a calculation, and you move that calculation over one, it changes the references above it to move with the calculation. And that's correct. That's exactly how we wanted it to look. So if I wanted the average humidity in column D, I can just copy and paste this over one more time here. And now when I look at the calculation, it changed all my C to Ds. That is something that's counterintuitive. You would think that if you copied a formula and pasted it someplace else, it would keep the formula the same. But when it automatically changes the formula depending on how much you move the formula, you'd be amazed at how much that really works and how successful that is. One thing it didn't do is it didn't make this a percent though. Why is that not say 83% humidity? It should. You know why? It's probably because when I copied this cell and pasted it here, I probably pasted the formula and its formatting at the same time. Okay. There's probably a way around that. This autofill options, it's telling me, well, you just copied and pasted here. What did you want to do? Look at that. Did you want to copy the cells? Did you want to just copy the formatting, or did you want to fill it without formatting? If I said, you know what, I wanted to copy that cell without the formatting from the low temp, now look what it did. It changed it to 84%. So my copying this formula from here to here copied and pasted not only the formula, but the formatting. I didn't have to do that. I could go back in after the fact and say, you know what? I only wanted you to fill in the function. I didn't want the formatting to come with it. And that's here in your autofill options. Fill without formatting. So let's look a little bit closer at this calculation again. The D is the column reference, right? Column D. The 2 is the row reference number. That's row 2, right? When we moved this calculation to the right, it changed the column letters to the right column that we're in, but it didn't change the row numbers. And that makes sense because we didn't move it from one row to another row. But I'm going to show you up here, if I were to add a calculation in this cell, don't do it. I'm just going to show you. Anytime you add a calculation to a cell, you start with the equal sign. Say I just add together cell B2 and B3. Or B2 and C2. Let's do that. B2 plus C2. And add these two cells together. When I hit enter, it tells me that the total of 75 plus 70 is 145. And when I look at this calculation, it's column B, row 2, plus column C, row 2. If I copy and paste this cell down one row, it also changes the references, but it doesn't change the column reference. It changes the row reference. It's still column B and column C. That didn't change. The row numbers changed. Does that make sense? When you move a calculation a row, it's going to change the row numbers to match the row it's in. When you change a calculation to a different column, it's going to change the column letters to reflect the new column that it's in. There is a way to make that stick. And sometimes you don't want that to change. And when you don't want that to change, put a $sign here in the reference. And that changes the reference to what we call an absolute cell reference. Okay, I actually typed it wrong. I think you went before the B. So you type a $sign before the column or a $sign before the row. It won't change it when you copy and paste it someplace else. You might have a spreadsheet that you want to copy and paste a formula across a whole area, but one of the things in that formula only exists in one place, and you don't want that formula to move. This is how you would type a cell reference when you don't want it to change. Now, when I copy and paste this down, look at 145. It is always, no matter where I move this calculation, it's always going to pull it from these two cells because I put these dollar signs in there, and that makes the cell reference what we call an absolute cell reference. It will not move when you move it to a different row or column. It will keep the cell references the same no matter where you move the calculation. Any questions? This is a lot. This is probably my most complicated class of the year.
Very powerful program.
It is. It can really do a lot.
Basic stuff, and it's
Yeah, I know. I know when you really get into it, it can do a tremendous amount of stuff. And when I said this can do rocket science, rocket scientists use this. It is a very popular tool. Okay. Let's talk about adding a different function to our precipitation here. Because average precipitation, we've already done an average. Let's do a sum. There are some formulas that are used so frequently that they kind of give you a little shortcut, like an instant formula button. So if we click down here at the bottom of our column for precipitation in cell E7, in our home toolbar, see this? This is what they call an auto sum. And if you click on it, it's just going to automatically sum. So automatically you put a sum function in there. You don't have to use the formula builder. You don't have to type in sum. You don't have to type in E2 plus E3 plus E4 plus E5. You can just click in the cell that you want the sum, and then that is your little, this automatically pops in. These are, see these functions here? Sum, average, count numbers, max, and min. These are so often used that they just give you a little button where you can just automatically say, you know what, just give me a sum here. And it did it right. It looked in the area where you were and says, well, are these the cells that you want to sum? And they are, cells E2 through E6. Now when I hit the enter key, the total amount of rain that we had for the entire week is 1.7 inches of rain. Okay. Give me 1 second here. I'm going to show you a different example. I'm going to show you a couple more examples of formulas that you can use, but I'm not going to have you type them along with me. I'm just going to show you an example of what it can do. And there's two examples I'm going to use. One is there is a function called an if function, okay, that can look at the cell value and give you a result if it's true and give you a different result if it's false. Okay? So in column F, I'm going to create a new column header called Was It Hot? All right. And I'm going to create a function in here that is going to look at the average high temp and make a decision on whether it was hot out or not. So it's going to be a calculated function. So I'm going to start with the equal sign. And when I start to type this in, you'll notice that the formula builder will start to guide me along. So the if function starts with an equal sign, but it's just the word if. And it tells me here, it checks whether a condition is met and returns one value if true and another value if it's false. Okay. I can click here and it'll open the function builder for me. But I'm just going to put in parentheses. See, it's showing me how the if function should be written out. If, and in parentheses, logical test, and then a comma, and then the value if that logical test is true, and then a comma, and then the value if that logical test is false, and then a close to the parentheses. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at the high temp for the week, and I'm going to make a decision on whether it was hot out that day. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a logical test. That logical test is, well, I don't know. What do you consider hot? Is 80 degrees hot?
Mhm.
It's 75 hot. I don't think 75 is hot.
Used to be.
Okay. I would say, where would we draw the line? 82? 82 is hot, 80 isn't? We'll just say 80 degrees is hot. And anything below 80 degrees is not considered hot. Anything above 80 degrees is hot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at cell B2, and I'm going to determine whether cell B2 is greater than 80. And then the value if true and the value if false. Okay. Is B2 greater than 80? If it's true, I'm going to just type in, I'm not even going to, you can put a number or a calculation or a cell reference, value if true. I'm just going to use text. I'm going to say yes. If it's over 80 degrees, is it hot? Yes, it's hot. Comma, if it's false, I'm going to say no, it's not. And I'm going to close my parentheses. So what this function is, this if function, it says, okay, if in cell B2, if that number is over 80 degrees, was it hot out? Yes. If it's lower than that, no. When I hit that, it's okay, no, that's right. So now what I can do is I can copy and paste this function all the way down, and it will now evaluate every day. This function is looking at this 75. Is it hot out? No, it's only 75 degrees. Although Thursday it was 84. Was it hot? Yes, it was. 99 and 98 are also hot. On Wednesday, though, 75 is back to the no. If you notice, it did use relative cell references. It changed the row number to 5 if I moved the function to row 5. If I copied the function to row 6, it would change that B5 to B6. So this is what we call an if function. There are also ways. Now, this is, if you notice, I included text in here. I didn't have to. I could have made this function show me a cell value or a result of a calculation. This yes doesn't have to be in quotations. This could be a cell reference. It could be another calculation in parentheses. It can be all sorts of different stuff. There's also a formula that we call concatenation. It's a big word. Concatenation is where you can use cell references embedded in a string of text. So for example, In cell A9 down here, I'm going to create another calculation, but this is going to be a string of text with a cell reference inside the string of text. Start with an equal sign. And in quotation marks, I'm going to type in the average low for the week was, I'm going to put a space, and I'm going to close my parentheses. An equal sign and then things in quotes, it just means it's going to print the text like this. The ampersand, this is an ampersand. It's above the 7. You hold down the shift key and hit this. It's the and symbol, right? The ampersand. As long as you have text in quotation marks, you put an ampersand next to a cell reference, it'll combine the two. So what I can do here is I can say the average low for the week was, what was the average low? Oh, here it is, 72.8. I can put in this cell reference here. I can even put in another ampersand and add more text to it if I want. I can put another quote and I can type in degrees and then end the quote. So what this is going to do is this is going to type the text. The average low for the week was, and then because I have an ampersand here, it's going to pull the data from this cell. And then it's going to add more text after it with this ampersand here. So see what it does? The average low for the week was 72.8 degrees. And it's pulling the data directly from 72.8. So if I change the low temp on Friday to 90, well, it would change that average. It's also going to change the information in that string of text at the bottom. See what it did? I changed the low temp on Friday to 90. It changed the 72 to 76, but it also reflected it here because this is a calculated cell. It's really kind of fun to put in a string of text a number that can change automatically when the data above it changes. Okay. So that's a lot. But we did 2 weeks of spreadsheets. We got through a logical data table last week where we stored a list of movies from our collection. And this week we learned how to create actually calculated cells using math and using cell references. There's one more thing I want to show you. This is something that people don't use very often, but it's nice to know it's there and it's nice to know roughly how it works. So I'm going to show you how it works and what it can do, but it's slightly complicated. So what's going to happen is if there ever comes a time that you want to use this, you're going to come into my help desk and go, remember that thing you showed me where I could take data from a spreadsheet and automatically put it into a letter? They call it a mail merge. I can help you do it then. This is one of those things, and spreadsheets are a lot like this. It's hard to remember all of this complicated spreadsheet stuff unless you work with spreadsheets on a regular basis. If you don't, it fades. Starting a calculated cell with an equal sign is going to be one of the first things you forget. You're going to stay away from spreadsheets for 6 months. You're going to sit down and you go, how do I make a cell calculate out again? Google will tell you pretty quick. But that's just an example of just, if you don't work with spreadsheets on a regular basis, it doesn't really stick in your head. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what's called a mail merge. Now, in our word processing class, we created this this document here. I'm going to make this a little smaller. And I'll read it. Okay. So in our word processing class, this was our part 2 of word processing. What we did is we created and formatted and added pictures and did paragraph formatting to this press release. Okay. Last week, we created a logical data table in Excel showing a list of different movies. I'll make this a little bit bigger. You can see what this looks like. Okay, so this is a logical data table. This is our date field with the dates that the movie is going to play. This is the genre of the movie. This is the title of the movie. This is our title field. We have two starring columns, starring 1 and starring 2, the running time of the movie and the rating of the movie. Now, this isn't a very big spreadsheet, but this is kind of the example that I told you about the water company. This is how they make form letters. What they do is they type a letter like this, and instead of putting the date and the year and the title, they put in little placeholders like this called date, year, genre. And you can tell Microsoft Word to pull the data from this spreadsheet and automatically pop it into these fields. And if you designed your logical data table correctly without gaps and with the column headers just right, well, then it makes creating this press release every week for every film really easy because you can just pull that data in. So I'm going to show you how it looks and how to put it together. And then when you sometime down the line want to do it yourself, come back and see me in help desk and we can do it together. But you start with a document. And what I normally do is you don't have to put in date. I kind of put in all caps when I'm creating the document. So I kind of know, well, this is the data that I'm going to pull in from the spreadsheet. But you can do this any way you want. Sometimes people put just a bunch of X's so they can see where they plan on putting it. I also changed the color of it into red on purpose, just so it's easier for you guys to see the results of it. But what I'm going to do is up at the top in our toolbar, we have a mailings toolbar up here. And this is only in Word. I don't think Excel has a mailings. It doesn't. Excel doesn't have a toolbar called mailings. But Microsoft Word does. So here under mailings, it says select recipients. I'm going to click on this and I'm going to say, I'm going to use an existing list. You can type a new list and it'll kind of give you a spreadsheet to make your list on your fly if you want. But in this case, I've already got an existing list and it's a spreadsheet. And that spreadsheet I saved in my documents, and it's right here. It's called the ECPL Summer Movie Series. This is very similar to the spreadsheet we created last week. And when I hit open, now you're going to notice it says, okay, well, my first row contains column headers. Are you just going to use sheet 1? I only have one sheet in my spreadsheet. And now, look at this. It gives me some more buttons in here. See where this insert merge field button is? When I click on this, it shows me the column headers from the spreadsheet I picked. The date, the genre, the title, who stars in it, the running time, and the rating of the movie. These are all of the column headers that it's pulling from this spreadsheet. See, if you make this logical data table correctly, it's really flexible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the word date here, and I'm going to insert a field into date. I'm going to say, yeah, I want to insert date here. Now look what it did. It kind of put in this little field name, date. I'm going to do the same thing for year. Oh, I don't have the year it came out in that spreadsheet. So I'm just gonna, oh, genre I do have though. I'm gonna insert the merge field for genre. And then the title of the movie is another merge field for my spreadsheet, title. The film is rated. What's it rated? Do I have that in my spreadsheet? Yeah, I have rating here. Choose rating. And it stars, the first person it stars, starring 1. Okay. And the second person it stars is starring 2. And the movie will run for a total of, and in running time, I can select all of this, and I can put in running time, and it'll show me in minutes. Okay, so now I did 2 things. I selected recipients. I used an existing spreadsheet to pull data from. And then when I connected it to my spreadsheet, I could insert these merge fields in the document where I want those to appear. And now, see, there's this big preview results button. I'm going to make this bigger before I hit preview results. You can see it. I'll zoom it into 200%. A bit bigger. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to mailings and I'm going to choose preview results. Okay, and check out what it did. It automatically put the first record in the spreadsheet. Let's take a look at that spreadsheet really quick. The first record was Minions, the second one was Blues Brothers, and then the third one was Shawshank Redemption. So we look at this. On 3/24, we will screen the children's comedy film Minions. The film is rated G, stars Sandra Bullock and Michael Keaton. The movie worldwide for a total of 131 minutes. And see we have these record selectors up here? We can scroll through the data from the spreadsheet. This is how the water company sends all the bills. It's just pulling data from the logical data table that we created last week, and it's scrolling through each record of the spreadsheet. You see how it's doing that? So this is the record 4. So on June 24th, we'll screen the thriller Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's rated PG, stars Harrison Ford and Karen Allen, and it'll run for a total of 156 minutes. If we look at the original spreadsheet it's pulling this data from, here's record number 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's Raiders of the Lost Ark. So this is a mail merge where we can take a form letter and a logical data table spreadsheet that we created, connect them, insert the field names from the spreadsheet into the document, and see where it says finish and merge up here? We can print all of them out. When I say print documents, it'll say, okay, what records do you want to print? Do you want to print just the current record, or you want to print all of them? So if I hit all, it's going to print out a sheet for every record in my spreadsheet. And if that spreadsheet had 30,000 names on it, like the water company does, they can type one letter, connect it to the spreadsheet of all the customers and how much money they owe for their water bill, and they can say, merge all 30,000 of these, and it'll just start printing out for every record. Dear blank, you owe this much money at this address for your water. It'll print that out, go to the next record, and print that out, go to the next record, print that out. Okay. That was the end of classes for the semester. Any questions? Access is a database software. And what a database software is a collection of spreadsheet tables. So when we create a spreadsheet table, remember I told you if you put a row in there, it thinks it's 2 separate tables? Right? So like a spreadsheet table like this. This is a logical data table. If I insert a row here, and I showed you that sort example, right? Now Excel thinks that the top 2 records are one table and the bottom 2 are another table. In early spreadsheets, people would put more than one table on a sheet, but they would put them diagonally. And the reason they would do that is because if you had to add a row or a column to the first one, it wouldn't mess up the diagonal table. If they're up below each other, if you wanted to add a column to the table above it, it's automatically going to add a table to the table below it, a column to the table below it, right? So if these were 2 separate tables and I added a column here, it's going to add that column to both tables. So what happened is Excel gave you the addition of what they call a sheet. See where it says sheet 1 down here? So if you had more than one table, you could add another sheet down here, and you could actually use data from one sheet in a calculation to the other sheet, right? Which is handy. Then the spreadsheet started getting big. If you were using lots of different data tables that were all kind of related, that's what a database is. So a spreadsheet is good when you have 1 or 2 tables of data, but once it starts getting more than that, that's when Access comes in, because that will allow you to have 15 tables, and it will allow you to like relate data from one table to another table. The reason they do that is sometimes for efficiency. You don't need to go through that. Yeah.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
When I went that,
So
some of that was related, so that's why I was curious.
you're absolutely right. So that's basically Access is just a collection of a bunch of different data tables. Once the spreadsheet is not up to the task, if it's too big of a task for the spreadsheet, then you get into that's what a database is. Okay. Well, that's all we got. Thank you so much. Have a nice Christmas if you celebrate that kind of thing. And I have you on the list already to contact about the classes coming up in January. If you're interested in doing the supplemental classes, I can put you on that list. Media literacy and misinformation. And then we're going to do a 4-week introduction to mindfulness meditation, which is, do you know what that is? Mindfulness meditation? It's a concentration exercise. It's a concentration exercise that helps you concentrate, helps you focus, is all it is. They use it nowadays a lot in cognitive behavioral therapy. Therapists use it. But originally, it comes from the Buddha. He came up with meditating. And since then, that was like 2,600 years ago or something like that. Like 600 years BC, I think, something like that, a long time ago. Since then, it's been used in every major world religion. Jesus would go out into the desert to meditate. Lots of people meditated over the years, but basically all it is it's practicing a single focusing on one thing to calm your mind down. And we have so many distractions in our lives that it's hurting our ability to concentrate. So taking a little bit of time out of your day every day just to concentrate, it's kind of like learning an instrument, learning a language, or playing a sport. You're conditioning yourself to be a better concentrator. So you'll find yourself being able to read books without your mind wandering off as much. You'll be able to concentrate on tasks a little bit better. And we're doing it to combat the constant stream of media that is dulling down our attention spans. That's what we're going to be doing it for. I've been meditating since about 2016. I've gone on some meditation retreats. I find it to be an easy and very powerful and useful tool to have in your toolbox. But really, it's just a concentration exercise. But you kind of have to learn how to sit down and do it. But it's fun, and it's actually quite relaxing. So.
Think about that. You said, when does it start?
January 30th is a 2-hour class that is called Media Literacy and Misinformation. Right, and then that's gonna bleed into the meditation classes. You don't have to take all of them. You can take one. You can come to the first meditation class, and if it's not for you, you don't have to ever come back. And if you want the media literacy, we'll talk a little bit more about how this media is affecting us, and how to trust media. Libraries are particularly well situated, because what do? Public libraries, we promote media. That's what we've always done. It's also our job to not only promote media, but promote it in a healthy way, and that's what we're trying to do with these classes. So.
Well, I will be back for that media literacy.
Okay, good. Good. It was nice to meet you. Thanks for coming.
I remember reading, I think it was in the Times, or maybe just online, Governor Braun and banning cell phones in schools. Is that our governor? I'm trying to remember exactly what it was I read. Was it him?
That wouldn't surprise me. I have not read that, but you know what? Australia just outlawed social media for children under 18, I think. 16? Yeah. And that's not a bad idea.
I was just skimming.
I know one of the schools, that's what they were trying to do, take their cell phones from the students because it was so
you're
distracting.
battling them.
And
yeah,
they said it was I don't know if it was a news something that I was watching, but
It's distracting the kids. It's distracting the adults. It's amazing how much kids pick up on it, though. They come up with their own words. They call it rotting. When you're just mindlessly going through your phones, they came up with the term doom scrolling because they realized, wait, why am I doing this? I'm not even getting any. This isn't even fun. They just find themselves stuck on the phone. Yeah, and as adults, we're going to have a mindfulness thing for children coming up in May based around our Star Wars event to hopefully combat that. But yeah, it's a problem. And with AI, it's just going to get worse. It's going to get worse. And hopefully a little bit of mindfulness will help.
A little?
Yeah, every little bit helps. So, all right, great. Have a nice holiday
You too.
and a good weekend.
So,
I will. Thank you very much. And I'm going to stop the recording.
Just a quick question. You said that you don't